Hi, we're out on the range today, so bear with any gunfire you hear in the background. Now, I've got a whole bunch of different types of handgun ammunition. Over here, I've got your Remington green and white box, your Winchester white box, a couple of different versions of Federal ammo, and stuff that would be called regular ammo. While over here, I've got your high dollar, high performance stuff. I've got Gold Dot, I got Golden Saber, Critical Duty, Critical Defense, and other types of things that you may have heard are sometimes called hyper ammunition. Well, there's no secret that I'm not a big fan of the hyper ammunitions. I don't think you're getting the most bang for your buck, pardon the pun. The problem is, every time I say that, I am inundated by people telling me all the reasons why this stuff is so great. Well, one of the reasons they give me is that it's more powerful than the regular ammunition. Well, it probably is if you're talking about standard velocity or target type stuff. Remember, this stuff is made for personal protection, anti-personnel, hunting purposes. But how about if we took regular ammunition that was made for the same purpose? Now, everything I've got here today is jacketed hollow point, semi-jacketed hollow point. It is made for personal protection, anti-personnel, or hunting purposes. In fact, the Winchester box is even labeled personal protection right on the box. So if you compare the hyper ammunition to regular ammunition that's made for the same purpose as the hyper ammunition, then is it more powerful? Well, let's go to the chronograph and see if we can shed some light on that. So let's start with the 9mm. Our test gun will be a Beretta 92 FS, and our first ammo will be the Winchester White Box 115 grain jacketed hollow point. $1,144, $1,146, $1,153, $1,135, $1,128. So let's see how that compares to the other ammo. Now let's try Remington green and white box. This is also a 115 grain jacketed hollow point. $1,116, $1,098, $1,165, $1,122, $1,140, $1,113. Now let's see how those compare to the hyper ammo. For our first hyper ammunition, we'll try the Speer Gold Dot. It's 115 grain jacketed hollow point. $1,172, $1,160, $1,194, $1,173, $1,159. So off the top, that seems a little more powerful, but let's see how that compares to another type of hyper ammunition. Now this is Hornady Critical Defense ammunition. It's a 115 grain ballistic tip bullet. $1,095, $1,093, $1,118, $1,099, $1,118. Now let's go crunch the numbers and see if the hyper ammunition was really any more powerful. So how'd we do? Well, we have our two regular ammunitions and our two hyper ammunitions. And as you can see, one of the hyper ammunitions is the most powerful, the other's the least powerful. But the question is not so much, is it more powerful, as much as, is it enough more to matter? Is the Gold Dot enough more than the Remington to matter? Arguably. Is it enough more than the Winchester to matter? 30 feet per second difference when you're talking about velocities like this? You know, not really. Interesting thing, our least powerful one is one of the hyper ammunitions, the Hornady Critical Defense. And I know we're talking about power, not economics, but I have to point out, I paid $24 for a box of 25 rounds of this stuff, while I only paid $17 for a box of 50 rounds of the Remington. So not only not more powerful, in terms of bang for your buck, not even close. But that's just our results in 9mm. Let's try a different caliber and see if we can get results that are halfway consistent with this. Well, let's try some .38 special ammunition. Now, today's test gun will be the Smith & Wesson Model 638. And I'll warn you right now, the velocities that I get will probably be less than what you see in the ballistics chart. Test guns for ballistics charts typically have longer barrels, but this is more akin to what people are actually carrying. So I figure I'll use this. Now let's start with the Remington green and white box. This is .38 special plus P with a 125 grain bullet. $825. $822. $827. $829. Now let's see how that compares to a hyper ammunition. Well, we'll compare our Remington regular ammunition to a Remington hyper ammunition. This is Golden Saber, and it's also a .38 special plus B 125 grain hollow point bullet. $890. $910. $880. $909. So that does seem quite a bit more powerful. Now let's go crunch those numbers. Well, I crunched the numbers. Our mean average velocity for the green and white box was 825. But for the Golden Saber was 897. That's over 70 feet per second more. So the bottom line question, is it enough more to matter? In this case, yes. There's still the downside of it costs a lot more, but at least you are getting something for that extra amount you spent. Now let's try one more caliber, and we'll make it a caliber for which I was able to find a wider variety of regular versus hyper ammunition. Well, let's try .40 Smith & Wesson. Now today's test gun will be the Sig Sauer Model P229, and we'll start with our Remington green and white box. This is 180 grain jacketed hollow point. $933. $925. $942. $913. Now let's see how that compares to some other types of ammo. Now let's try our Winchester white box ammunition, and this is also a 180 grain jacketed hollow point. $914. $908. $930. $903. Now let's see how those compare to some different types of hyper ammunition. Now let's try this Remington Golden Saber ammunition, which is also a 180 grain jacketed hollow point. $946. $972. $959. $971. That seems off the top of my head to be a little bit more powerful than the others, but let's try another type of hyper ammo. Now let's try this Federal Premium ammunition, which is also a 180 grain jacketed hollow point. $1,001. $998. $1,006. $996. So now let's go crunch those numbers and see what they tell us. So how'd we do with the 40 Smith & Wesson? Well, our regular ammo versus our hyper ammo, and yeah, the hyper ammo is more powerful. Enough more so to matter? With the Federal Premium, yes. With the Golden Saber, not really. Interesting note, when we were shooting the .38 Special, the Remington Green and White box versus the Remington Golden Saber, there was a lot of difference. In the case of the 40 Smith & Wesson, the regular versus the Golden Saber, there really isn't all that much difference. But the bottom line for today is hyper ammunition more powerful than regular ammunition? Well, that comes with a few caveats. First of all, chronographs don't always agree with each other. And a particular type of ammunition can give you velocity that varies quite a bit depending on which gun you put it in. There's also the thing that environmental factors can, to varying minor degrees, be an effect on your velocity. Environmental factors like ambient temperature and elevation and barometric pressure. So the numbers I get here today might not necessarily be the same numbers somebody else gets somewhere else on a different day. Keep that in mind. But the real bottom line, is hyper ammunition more powerful than regular ammunition? Well, by what we've done here today, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Is it enough more powerful to matter? Well, sometimes yes and sometimes not so much. There's also the questions you could ask, like, is it enough more powerful to justify the exorbitant price tag? Well, you can judge that for yourself. And there's the matter of the advantage you get from the greater power, is that going to be outweighed by the disadvantage of the greater recoil you might get? You can judge that for yourself too. There's also the big thing of more powerful does not automatically mean more effective at the task at hand. There are other factors that go into it, but those are factors for a different time, and hopefully we'll have a video presentation on that in the fairly near future. So, as always, don't try this at home, I'm what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the Is Hyper Ammunition Enough More Powerful Than Regular Ammunition to Make a Difference video.